Chapter 2. The thief comes only in order to steal and kill and destroy. But I came so that they may have life and have it in abundance. John chapter 10, verse 10. The first 4 years of my life, I mostly spent going back and forth between the hospital and 7 different group homes. Nobody wanted to adopt a premature born heroin addict who stayed sick. So I was destined to be a ward of the state. No parents, no known relatives, and no one who cared whether I lived or died. But I fought like a true soldier, with underdeveloped lungs and several other health issues that made my survival a real challenge. But since I'm the one telling this story, I guess there really is no question as to the outcome of that battle. By the time I turned 6, my lungs had developed enough to do what they were meant to do, and the doctors were becoming more optimistic about my future. It was during this time that I was surprisingly adopted by a married couple in their mid-30s who had no kids of their own and were well established in an upper middle class kind of way. My new mom, Mariah, was an accountant working for the hospital, and my new dad, Martez, was some kind of big time doctor, I heard. But it wasn't until a couple of years later, actually the day after my 8th birthday, that I found out my adopted father was the very same doctor who delivered me from the stomach of my dying mother and then saved my life. I sat and listened as he told me the whole story, how he'd given up after doing all he could to get my heart to start beating. And as he spoke of how my heart had miraculously started beating, I saw a tear roll from his eyes, and I could tell he was reliving the moment. A moment I had no recollection of. But when he told me that story, our bond began to grow even stronger than it already was. My life was finally starting to seem normal. About a year after adopting me, Tez and Mariah had their first child after years of unsuccessful attempts. Junior was the spitting image of his father, and at first, I began to think they would no longer want me, now that they finally had the child they had always wanted, their own flesh and blood. But nothing changed. Tez, though I still hadn't gotten to the point of calling him dad, never treated me any different or loved me any less than he did his own flesh and blood. And neither did Mariah at first. So what time I'm picking you up this evening, Ted asked me, just as we turned into the parking lot of my school. I get out of detention at 4:15, I replied, as I shifted in my seat and turned to face him. But I can walk home. Yeah, right, Ted said sarcastically, before giving me that look of his, with his lip turned up, that always made me feel like I had just said something stupid. The school I attended was less than 2 miles from the house, but Ted still insisted on dropping me off every morning and picking me up every evening. I'll be here at 4:15, said Ted as I got out of the car. I was kind of laid back at school and didn't do much mingling, except maybe with a few kids I knew from the neighborhood. I'd always been a fast learner, so I did extremely well and made excellent grades in all my classes. But I had a very quick temper and was easily angered, which is why I had to stay in detention for the day. My English teacher, a white man named Mr. Newman, had the class to write a 1-page report on what we wanted to be when we grew up. So as I was leaving class the day before, he stopped me and gave me my paper back. "You can do better than this, Solomon," he said as he returned the paper. "What's wrong with it?" I asked in a serious tone. I knew I had done a good job because I had taken my time and wrote a full page about how I wanted to play in the NBA one day. I made sure all my capitalizations and punctuations were in order, so I couldn't see what was wrong. "I just think you can do better than that," was the only response Mr. Newman gave before he went back to grading his papers on his desk. "Do it over," he demanded, without even looking up from the pile in front of him. "Man, you can just grade it like it is," I replied. "I ain't doing it over." And with that said, I dropped the piece of paper on the desk and walked out of class, leaving Mr. Newman wide-eyed as he screamed something about detention as I was leaving. So here I am, sitting in after-school detention, along with 12 other students. It was supposed to be an hour of quiet time, but with the teacher absent from the class during the last 15 minutes, some of the students became loud and unruly. My plan had been to finish up my homework in detention so I wouldn't have to do it when I got home. But that plan was quickly detoured when a wad of paper hit me in the back of the head. I turned in my seat and stared right into the face of Tim, a 6th grader who walked around the school every day like he was the biggest and baddest kid in the school. He was always doing something to terrorize the other students, but lately he seemed to have a special interest in me for some reason. Maybe it was my quiet, laid-back demeanor, or the fact that I was still abnormally small for my age. But whatever the reason was, I knew it would eventually come a time when the two of us would clash, and I was in no way looking forward to it. But I wasn't about to back down from it either. I don't think an ounce of fear ran through my little body from the day I was born. "You got a problem, Tim?" asked, as he stood up and fixed me with a challenging gaze. "Yeah, you need to watch where you throw that paper," I replied, trying to remain calm. "And if I don't, what you gonna do?" Tim was now towering over me, causing me to think twice about entertaining this 12-year-old who was twice my size. "What, you gonna run and tell your daddy?" His last remark was followed by an annoying laugh. The teacher returned to the classroom and ordered everybody to quiet down and take their seats. But I read Tim's lip with a clear understanding as he quietly mouthed the words, "I see you out of class." Now this was a confrontation I knew was inevitable, though I had hoped I could avoid for as long as I could. We were dismissed from detention at exactly 4:15. I quietly picked up my book bag and joined the other students as we eagerly left the classroom. Now it wasn't my plan to initiate a fight with Tim, and as I made my way through the crowded hallway, I was beginning to think that he'd changed his mind. I was almost to the door when someone bumped into me from behind, and I knew instantly that it was no mistake. When I turned around, Tim and the two younger boys that always followed him around were standing there looking like they were ready to tear me apart. With the hallway being somewhat crowded, several students stopped in anticipation of a fight. But not wanting to back down, I stepped toward Tim just as another boy who was close to Tim's side stepped between us. "I hope you don't think y'all about to jump him like you do everybody else," said Midnight, who lived a few houses down from me in my neighborhood. "This ain't got nothing to do with you, Midnight," Tim replied as he fixed Midnight with a cold look. "It got a lot to do with me. If all three of y'all try to jump him," Midnight shot back. The two of us wasn't exactly friends at the time. I mean, we shot ball at the park together a few times and ran into each other at the store from time to time. But at that moment, he was the best friend I had. "Yeah, you right," said Tim as he moved closer to me, now just inches away. "I don't need no help." He moved his two flunkies off and continued to run his mouth while I was building up the nerve to hit him in it. He don't weigh but about 50. That was as far as he got. My fist connected with his lip at about the same time the word pounds would have come out of his mouth had I not interrupted. It was at that moment that all the loud talking and laughing in the hallway came to a complete stop, and it was so quiet you could hear the flies buzzing. I saw Midnight, my neighbor from down the street, standing to the side watching me with a smirk on his face and looking as if he was ready to intervene if anyone else got involved. My thoughts quickly went back to my group home days, where being able to fight was almost as essential as eating. A 12-year-old named Marty taught me a few fighting techniques because he was tired of seeing me get picked on by the bigger kids because I was so much smaller and real quiet. I learned something from Marty back then that I took to heart and lived by for many years. He told me this: if you get a person off balance with the first punch, don't let up. When you get them down, you finish them. So, without allowing Tim to regain his bearings, I followed up with a hard kick to the groin, doubling him over. I think it was on that day that I first discovered just how much anger and rage had been bottled up inside me. I was completely zoned out. And as Tim tried to stand, he was met with another blow that split his lip and my knuckles simultaneously. I felt the pain instantly as it seemed to shoot from my tiny hand straight up my arm, and I had no intentions of letting up until I heard a woman's voice yell for us to stop. But with so many students crowded around, Miss Anderson, the school principal, couldn't get a close view of what was going on. And before anyone knew it, I slipped through the crowd and disappeared, leaving Tim standing there with blood running from his mouth and a small cut beneath his eye.